Hello everyone, this is Lisa with Old Orchid Yarnery. This is a tutorial for the Building with Lace class that started March 2024. And I'm here to show you the provisional cast on, putting in lifelines, and getting set up and knitting the first section of lace. So the first section of lace is going to look like this. Beautiful. And you'll see this turquoise color down on the bottom, and then you'll see a little pink yarn there as well, if you can see that. The turquoise is my provisional cast on, the pink is my lifeline. So we'll talk about all that, and then we'll talk about knitting the lace. So the first thing we want to do is a crochet provisional cast on. I'm only going to cast on 17 stitches to do 2 repeats. However, your project is going to call for 120 stitches. So we're going to make a slip knot. A provisional cast on is a cast on that leaves live stitches at the end. The reason is we're going to come back when we're all done and we're going to attach a border onto this first end, and we want it to look seamless. We don't want to have to pick up stitches. So to do a crochet provisional cast on, you're going to tie a slip knot, put it on your crochet hook. Any crochet hook works that's appropriate with your waste yarn. It should be something kind of smooth. You can either chain a few to start or not, up to you. I'm going to chain 5 just randomly. And now I'm going to pick up my knitting needle. And my knitting needle, raise this up a little bit, my knitting needle is going to go in my left hand, my crochet hook in my right hand. Yarn is going to go under the knitting needle, crochet hook on top of the knitting needle. And what we're going to be doing essentially is just chaining over this knitting needle, like this. So I'm holding on down at the bottom, my yarn is under the needle, crochet hooks on top. I'm just going to grab the yarn, pull it through. I'm going to move the yarn to the back. Grab the yarn, pull it through, make a chain, move it to the back. You don't have to worry too much about the tension of your crochet cast on, provisional cast on, because this is all going to be coming out later. It's just to hold those stitches in place until we're ready to come use them again. So let me just go a little slower here for you. I'm moving the yarn to the back, crochet hooks on top, yarning over and pulling through. Yarn to the back, yarn over, purl through. Yarn to the back, yarn over, pull through. As you can see, we're forming a chain here on the front, but it's going around the knitting needle. So these are going to be where we're going to knit into to have those live stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We'll do a few more, get to 17 for me. There's 10, yarn in the back, 11, yarn in the back, 12, yarn in the back, 13, yarn in the back, 14, yarn in the back, 15, yarn in the back, 16, yarn in the back, and 17. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to chain a few more off the needle, 5 or 10, whatever you want, doesn't matter. 3, 4, we'll do 5. And now I'm going to cut my yarn and pull it through. So what I'm left with is, here's where I started, then here's my stitches that I cast on using the provisional crocheted cast on, and here's where I ended. I'm going to go back to where I started, and I'm going to tie a knot in this tail. Just any kind of a knot so that you can see that it's there. Sometimes I'll make a double knot if I feel like it's not big enough to make me notice it. And the reason we're tying a knot there is because that is not the end we're going to pull when we take out our provisional cast on. So where there's a knot is not where you pull. You won't need to know that until we get all the way to the other end of the shawl, 9 months from now. But just keep in mind, the end you start with should have a knot in it. The end you end with should not. It should just be a smooth tail. So that is our crocheted provisional cast on. And then the instructions tell us to take our working yarn, or your project yarn. This is on the bottom of page 9 in your book if you're following along. And it wants us to knit all the stitches. So I'm just going to go ahead and start knitting. Leave a little bit of a tail here. And I'm going to knit into that provisional cast on using the loops on my hook, on my needle, made with the crochet hook. We're just going to knit all the way across. I will try to demonstrate alternate rows in English style and continental style. but we are simply knitting across with our project yarn. Maybe. This yarn is being fiddly with me this morning. Right now I'm just using Barocco Modern Cotton as my sample for you, just because it's something I had in some bright colors. I wanted to get some good contrasting colors so that you'd be able to see the Provisional Cast On and the Lifeline and the project yarn clearly and see what was what when we're all done here. So we're just going to continue knitting across our stitches. In this little sample it's 17, in your project it'll be 120. And you know, when you're casting on that Provisional Cast On, if you want, maybe after every 10 stitches or 20 stitches, put a marker so that you don't have to keep recounting them over and over. I know when I'm casting on 120, I end up counting multiple times. So I've started trying to use markers. All right, so there at the bottom of page 9, under instructions, row 1, right side, with project yarn, knit all the stitches. So upon completion of your row, place a lifeline through the stitches of this row. So this pink is going to be my lifeline. I'm just going to thread it on to a tapestry needle. Now you're going to want to cut your lifeline to be longer than your 120 stitches is on your needle, because you need it to hang out some on each side so we don't lose it. For my purposes right now, and maybe if you have a good big enough piece to use for your lifeline, I'm not going to cut it. I'm just going to go ahead and thread it onto my tapestry needle, put it through, and then I'll cut it afterwards to length. So this is how I put a lifeline in. I'm going to go ahead and hold my knitting needle in my left hand again, but I'm going to move those stitches to the cable. The reason is it gives me more room here between in the stitch, because I want to put this needle, this tapestry needle with the lifeline on it, through here. And if it's on the needle, I just have less space and I'm more likely to split the yarn, because I really don't want to split the yarn here. I just want to slide this through in between the stitches, just like this. I'm not catching any yarn, I'm just sliding it through. So I'll put it through a few of them and pull it. I'll go back down and put it through a few more. Again, being careful not to catch any of the yarn with the tapestry needle. We just want it to go right through the middle, not attached to any of the yarn. That'll make it difficult to pull out later. We'll have a whole new situation to deal with that will involve scissors. Okay, so I've got it pulled through. So now I'm going to take my tapestry needle off. And so now you can see this pink yarn is my lifeline. The blue is my project yarn, and the yellow is my Provisional Cast On. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave a decent amount of tail on each end so that my lifeline does not pull out. The idea is that the lifeline is going to stay there for the duration of the project. So now I've cut it. So here's one end. Yellow is Provisional Cast On, blue is project yarn, pink is lifeline. So I've just cut that lifeline. Oh, it's maybe, I don't know, 6 inches or so on each side, 6 or 8 inches. If anything starts to get in your way, you can always tie your Provisional Cast On and your lifeline together if they start bothering you, but I think you'll be fine. All right, so we've now completed row 1 right side at the bottom of page 9. We did our Provisional Cast On, we knit all the stitches, and then we put a lifeline through the stitches of this row. So now rows 2 through 8 are just going to be a garter border at the end. So let me show you on my completed piece. We just have this garter border right here where all the stitches are knit. So rows 2 through 8, we're going to slip the first stitch with the yarn in front and knit. And we're just going to do that for each of those rows, and it's going to create this garter border. So let me get back here, get my project yarn. Don't knit with your tail. Don't knit with your Provisional Cast On. Don't knit with your lifeline. Hopefully they're all contrasting colors so you don't accidentally knit with any of those. So we're going to slip one with the yarn in front, which means I'm going to move the yarn to the front of my work. I'm going to slip one as if to purl. And now I'm going to take the yarn to the back again, because I'm now just going to knit across my row. Again, I'll do this one Continental, I'll do the next row English. I slip one with the yarn in front and then knit across the row. After I get a couple of these rows done, I'll show you why we're slipping that first one. It's because it makes a really nice edge, and I will show you on my sample what that looks like. Knit all the way to the end. Really hoping you're all going to enjoy this lace class. I can't wait to see what some of the designs look like in the yarns that you've picked. They're going to just be beautiful. Okay, so last stitch, we're going to knit it. Now that one's a little loose, but it's because it's my first stitch, so I'm just going to tug on my initial tail a little bit and tighten it up. It'll be fine. Now we're going to turn, and now we're going to knit another row, and I will do this one English style. So with my yarn in front, I'm going to slip the first one knitwise. We're slipping it, purlwise, sorry. We're slipping it purlwise because we don't want to twist it. If we slip it this way, it's going to twist that stitch. We just want to move it from one needle to the next. And if a pattern ever tells you to slip a stitch and doesn't say which way to do it, it's always purlwise if they don't tell you, because you're just moving it from one needle to the next. So we're going to move that, slip that stitch with the yarn in front, and now we're going to knit across our row. So for me, this is row 3. We're going to do rows 2 through 8 this way. I'll go ahead and stop the video and knit my 8 rows. But before I do that, let me get to the end of this row and I will show you what that slip stitch on the end looks like, why we're doing that. We're going to be maintaining a garter edge on each side of our fabric all the way up this project. All 6 feet of it, I think it is. And if you have a garter stitch and you're just knitting every row, not slipping anything at the beginning, you end up with these garter bumps on the end of, purl bumps on the end of each row. And it's fine, it's not unattractive, it's just not the look we want for this project. We want a little bit of a smoother, more finished looking edge. So because of that, the designer here has asked us to slip the first stitch with the yarn in front. So let me show you what that looks like. I'm hoping you can see this well. So because I've slipped every stitch on the edge of my garter, I have this nice row of chains and V's going down the end. And that looks really pretty. It looks much nicer than a typical garter stitch border would look with the little bumps on the edge. All right, I'm going to finish up rows 2 through 8, and then I'll be right back. All right, so we've now completed our provisional cast on, put in our lifeline, knit our 8 rows of garter stitch for our border, and done the 2 setup rows. Setup row 1, which was putting an increase at the beginning and the middle and the end, and then setup row 2, which was purling all the way across. We have a marker, 5 stitches from each end. So now we're ready to start the body of our project, the lace pattern. So we want to remember to maintain that garter stitch edge all the way through the entire project. This is not going to change. So we will always slip the first stitch with the yarn in front and knit 4 more so that we have 5. Only thing you're going to have to really remember is slipping that first stitch, because the marker here should help remind you to knit up to that marker. Then you're going to be following your lace chart. For this first section, we're going to go row 1. The only stitches we have in this row are yarn overs, knit 2 togethers, and SSKs. So let's just start. The plain boxes are a knit stitch, so we will knit. Then we'll do a yarn over. Knit 2 together is inserting into 2 stitches at the same time as if you're going to knit them. Knitting them. Then we're going to knit 3. Those plain boxes mean knit on the right side. Now we're going to do an SSK. An SSK is a slip, slip, knit. If the pattern doesn't tell you which way to slip, you always slip knitwise, but in a slip, slip, knit, you'll see in the directions in another spot in the book that tells you to slip 1 knitwise, slip another 1 knitwise. We're doing them 1 at a time though, and then we're going into the stitches in the front with our left needle and knitting them together. I'll show you that again in just a minute. And then there's a yarn over. Now that is the end of our repeat. See that red line in your pattern? So we're going to put a marker at the end of every repeat as we go across. For my sample, I'm only going to have 2 repeats, but you're going to have, I think 13 going across. So when we get to that yarn over and that red line, we go back to the red line on the right. We continue repeating what's in between the red lines. So the first stitch then is a knit, yarn over, knit 2 together, 3 knits. Now here's that SSK again, so I'll show you. We're going to do a slip, slip. Why do I have an extra stitch? Oh, I know why. Never mind. So we're going to do a slip, slip, knit. So we're going to slip one as if to knit. We're going to do slip second one as if to knit. And then we're going to insert our left needle tip into the front of those stitches on the right needle and knit them together. So now we've come, and then we do a yarn over. Now we've come to our red line again. And then the very last stitch on row 1 is a knit, and that's to the left of the red line. Now I've come to my marker, so it tells me these are my last 5. I just knit them. Row 2 and all even rows in this pattern are always just purl. However, remember we're maintaining that garter border. So the first 5 stitches, we're going to slip one with the yarn in front, always. Knit to the marker. It doesn't say that specifically in the rows, it just tells you to maintain that garter border. Okay, then I get to my marker, and now we're just going to purl over to the other side. When you come to your yarn overs, they're going to seem kind of loose. Don't worry, just purl them. They're supposed to be there. They're what create the eyelet part in the lace that makes it look like lace. So purling, purling. Now I'm going to come to this other marker here. That's just my marker in the middle for my repeat. So I'll slip that. There's a yarn over. I'm going to go ahead and purl it. And we're going to keep purling to the other end. So for me, I used a different color marker on each end. I'll show you at the end of this row. Just so I could differentiate between the markers between my repeats and the markers before the end of my garter edge. So there I'm going to slip that marker, and now I'm going to knit these last 5 stitches. So depending on how you like to organize things, you might want to think about that using a different color. So here I've used a pink marker at each end to mark my garter stitch edge, and then a white marker in between my repeats. And if I had more repeats here, I'd just have more white markers. So now we're going to do row 3. Row 3 is just going to be those same stitches we had in row 1, just in a different place. So first stitch is always slip one with yarn in front, knit to the marker. That maintains that garter edge for us. Again, that's not on your chart, so just keep in mind it's not on your chart. Then I get to here, and now I start my chart. So my first 2 stitches are plain white boxes, so those are going to be knits. Then there's a yarn over, then there's a knit 2 together, there's a plain box, so it's a knit 1, then there's an SSK, slip as if to knit, slip as if to knit, go into the stitches in the front and knit them together, and a yarn over and a knit 1. And now I come to that red line on my chart, and I come to my marker in between my repeats, so it's fine, that's like my red line. I'm going to slip that marker over, and I'm going to go back to the right side of row 3 and get started again. So we've got the knit 2. We just keep going back and forth between those red lines until we get to the last. Yarn over. Since we already did the knit 2 togethers and the SSKs, I'm just going to keep going through them to finish this row. I want to get to the central double decrease to show you that. There's my slip, slip, knit. And my yarn over, and I knit 1, and now I have 1 stitch left, and that's because I've come to my red line, and my last stitch is a knit, and now I'm at my border stitches, which are knit to the end. Okay, now we're going to purl across because we are now on row 4. See how our pattern's starting to form there? All right, row 4 is a purl row, but remember we always slip the first one with the yarn in front, knit to the marker, and now we're going to purl all the way over to our other garter edge marker. And then we're going to do row 5, and row 5 has a stitch in it that may or may not be familiar to you. It's called a central double decrease. It's not difficult, but if it's different to you, then I want to be sure to show it to you. So I'm just moving my repeat marker over because I'm just purling. There's no other stitches on this row to do. Now I'm at my pink border marker, so I slip that and I just knit to the end. And that was row 4. Again, all the even number rows are all purls, except that garter edge. All right, row 5. Row 5 is the big one. It's got that central double decrease in it. So we are going to do our garter edge first. We don't even have to look at the chart yet. We're just going to slip one with yarn in front. And we're going to knit to our first marker, which gives us that garter edge border. And now I'm going to slip one, and now I go to the chart. So row 5 has 3 plain boxes at the beginning. So that's a knit, knit, knit. And then there's a yarn over. And now there's a central double decrease. The trick with a central double decrease is we're slipping 2 as if to knit, but we're doing them together. You know, slip, slip, knit, you slip them one at a time. Central double decrease, you're slipping them together. So you're going to go in as if you're going to do a knit 2 together, like that, but you're just going to slip them off onto the right needle. And now we're going to knit the next stitch. And then those 2 that we slipped, we're going to take them up and over, pass them over the one we just knit. It's a little hard to see yet. You'll be able to see it later, but what it does is it sets those 2 stitches up that you slipped up in such a way so that this nice V is on the outside, on the top, after you slip it off. So after the central double decrease is another yarn over, and then 2 knits. And then we should be at our repeat marker, which we are, yay. So slip it over and go back to the beginning of row 5 to repeat it again. So we got 3 knits. And then we got a yarn over, and I hold that yarn over in place with my index finger while I'm doing the central double decrease so it doesn't fall off. So we're going to go into these 2 stitches as if we're going to knit 2 together, but instead of knitting them, we're just going to slip them off onto the right needle. Then we're going to knit 1, and then we're going to take those 2 we slipped, and we're going to pass them up and off over the one we just knit, like that. And then a yarn over and knit 2. And for me, I'm at the end here because I only did 2 repeats. So I have 1 stitch left. I just knit it. That's the one just to the left of that red line. And now I'm at my garter border, so I slip the marker and knit 5 to get to the end. There we go. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and finish rows 6 through 14. You'll see that they just have those knit 2 togethers, the yarn overs, and the slip slip knits. So there's nothing fancy in there. And the even number rows are all purls. So I'll be right back when we get to the end of that. Okay, I've now completed the first 14 rows of the chart. So again, here's my project. I've got my provisional cast on in the yellow. My lifeline is the pink. The blue's my working yarn. Here's my garter edge at the beginning. I've marked my right side with a stitch marker, although it's easy now to see the right side from the wrong side. So you might not need that stitch marker on the right side anymore. I've knit up my 14 rows. I've got my garter edge being maintained on each side, and I've got this pink marker telling me where that is. And I have 2 repeats of the pattern chart with a marker in between each one. So now the last thing it tells you to do is you need to do a decrease row over the body stitches with the wrong side facing, because you've just finished a right side, we just finished it, no, sorry. So you're going to be doing this rows 1 through 14, you're going to repeat it 3 times, and then rows 1 through 5 once more, ending with row 5 for a total of 47 rows. So then you're going to do a decrease round on the wrong side to get the stitches to the number we need them to be. And then you're going to do garter again for 8 rows. So here's the beginning of my completed piece. Here are my repeats, my 3 repeats of rows 1 through 14. And then here's rows 1 through 5. And then here's I did a decrease row, and then here's the top border, where again, I'm maintaining that garter edge by slipping the first stitch, knitting, and then knitting all the way across. And on the wrong side, slipping the first stitch and knitting, and then knitting all the way across again because we're doing garter. So where you want to be when we meet next time is you want to have a piece that looks like this. Let me go up a little bit so you can see it more. So there you can see the, you do not have to block your piece if you don't want to. I did. I put it on some try-it-on tubing just so that I could block it for demonstration purposes. You don't have to block it if you don't want to. You can give it a light steam if you'd like. Just pin it out and give it a light steam so you can see the lace starting to form. That might be fun to do. But it's not necessary for class. Then when you come on the last Saturday in April, which I believe is the 27th, then this is what you should look like. And you should have this top border garter edge, and then we'll start the next pattern there. As always, if you have any questions or problems or need any help, please do let me know. And there are also some great video links in the book that you have that will take you to some tips and tricks that the designer has given too. Have fun. I think this lace pattern is going to be so fun, and I can't wait to see the finished products. Bye-bye.